Mueller is a fourth-generation farmer and a state agriculture leader with a national voice. That's likely why he got a VIP invite with several hundred others from across the country for a March event at the White House. However, he did not come home with what he hoped. Hi, I'm Dave Price. Mark is a corn guy, a long-time corn guy for more than 30 years. He's also the president of the Iowa Corn Growers Association. As you might guess, he is a big advocate for the potential of corn. But he knows the math. The U.S. right now produces much more corn than we consume. That's why he left D.C. disappointed that no announcement from the President of the United States would seem to change that math anytime soon. We connect with Mark on his farm near Waverly, Iowa. Well, hi, Mark. We appreciate you joining us. How are you?
Very good, thank you. It's a beautiful day outside. It is supposed to rain here later today, but I am not really too nervous about it. The earliest I've ever been in the field was March 30th, and most of the time I don't get in the field until the first or second week of April. If I'm not in the field by April 21st, I'll be pretty grumpy. That's 3 weeks away yet.
All right. Talk about corn. You've been in it a long time. Why corn?
Well, as far as the organization, the Iowa Corn Growers Association, the purpose of Iowa Corn is to, well, speak out for the farmer. We speak only on corn matters. We do not take part in the culture wars. We only try to affect matters that influence the price of corn, the profitability of the corn grower. So one of the things that Iowa Corn is very good at is getting our legislators to listen to us. They return our phone calls. They sometimes call us up and say, listen, how is this going to affect your constituency? So if we're not on the phone every day to somebody in DC, it's unusual. We'll get phone calls from our senators, from our representatives. We work closely with them, most recently on E15, but we have several issues going on at the same time. And we also do things at the state level. I was at the Capitol last week with all the other leadership from Iowa Corn, the executive committee, that is, as well as probably, 75 or 80 of our members. Everybody's seeking out their own particular representative or senator to talk about the matters that impact corn. For the moment, we're talking about the carbon pipeline, water quality issues. Let's see.
You got a few. You got some big ones.
Well, yeah, and some of these go on for years. And
sure,
I'd also have to say that it's important what we do when we get something started, but oftentimes it's just as important what we nip in the bud.
Sure.
The idea is that start to get traction, and we'll get a phone call from a senator or a representative, either in Iowa or in DC, saying, how is this going to impact farmers in general? It's not always corn growers in particular, but farmers in general. And sometimes we get some of those things stopped before they gain any traction.
Sure. Now, corn is not all you do personally, and I'm curious if because of that, how does that kind of guide you as, you're a leading voice for corn in the state and beyond. So you have your focus in other areas too, though, right?
I do. I raise soybeans like most farmers do in Iowa. There's
Sure.
hardly anybody that's all corn all the time. So matters that impact soybeans impact me as well because I'm going to be growing it. I would point to the recent raising of the RVO volume numbers. I think I'm saying that right, for soybeans, for biodiesel.
Mm-hmm.
That's something that's definitely going to help Iowa farmers. It's not a corn specific issue. The RVO numbers for, and I'm talking about renewable volume obligation numbers. I think I've got that right. Those didn't really change for ethanol, for E15 use, but I will say that anything that helps corn and soybeans, something that helps one is going to help the other. I also work with, I have my hands in the livestock industry. I supply a dairy with corn for silage and alfalfa. So I actually do watch alfalfa prices, which aren't great, but I view it as diversification for my farm. 20 years ago, I sold 20 acres to a young couple from the Netherlands, and they sold the family herd in the Netherlands and moved to the United States to start life in the New World, which is
Hmm.
not much different from what my great 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 grandfather did, 130 years ago.
Yeah.
So it's a chance for me to diversify without actually having to milk cows.
Uh, Good trade out there, I suppose. What about the racing pigeons? Can you talk about that?
Oh, that's definitely a niche market. And yeah, I know somebody from Des Moines. Well, I'll just say their name right now, Des Moines Feed.
Okay.
And the Des Moines Feed sells a mix of grains, a feed mix, actually four different feed mixes for racing pigeons. And I raise the corn that goes into their racing pigeon mix. It's a special, it's a flint type corn that was bred for being a little bit more dense in nutrients. And there's not much of a racing pigeon club in Iowa anymore. I think NASCAR kind of drew them away, but there's
Hmm.
a definite racing pigeon um, culture on the East and West Coast and has been for centuries. It's actually more popular in Europe and the Far East, but there's some of that, there's a demand for that feed and that corn that I grow for them in this country. It's only 60 or 70 acres. It doesn't yield very well, but it has a pretty nice premium. And when I came to do my cost of production and the money I make on stuff, it was one of my more profitable niches this year. Unfortunately, I only have to raise it for once every 3 years, and then
Hmm.
that's enough for them. So it's a bit of diversification. I raised some other specialty crops as well. Azuki beans. There was something called the Green Bean Project, which started out of Jefferson, Iowa years ago, and I got into it. I got involved. I'm glad I did. We raised Azuki beans, which are a Japanese dessert bean. And we raised pretty good Azuki beans. Our Japanese importer really enjoyed them. But then after my third or fourth year, he said, I love your Azuki beans. You're the best quality. I'll take everything that you grow, and I'll take it for Chinese prices. And the
Oh,
problem there is that Chinese Azuki beans were notorious for their poor quality. So they wanted the best quality beans at the poorest quality price.
yeah.
And at that point, I'm just kind of thinking to myself,
No,
dang.
thanks.
So I I I opted not to grow anymore, and the green bean project eventually just kind of folded. But for about 6 years altogether, we raised a different crop. Azuki beans look like pretty sickly soybeans, and instead of a white or pink flower, it's a yellow flower, and they're a reddish brown in color, and they're used as a dessert in Japan. There's tofu, miso, and onpan. And onpan is tastes kind of like a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. That's the closest taste I can make it to attribute it to.
Yeah.
But they had a very good advertising campaign. There's a cartoon character called Onpan Man, and it's uh, it's very popular with the kids. They don't eat Hershey bars over there. They eat Onpan sandwiches.
I think we got to come back to the racing pigeons. I think that's where the focus has got to be. You're getting a premium price for it. What they need is they need to find like a YouTube channel, a streaming channel, something to blow up the popularity, and you're set. You're set
I
for generations. You can transition the entire farm.
Yeah, well, yeah, they better fatten up those pigeons. I, I will touch on one more fact that I learned about it. Racing pigeons, the distance of a race. I better explain the mechanics first, and you can edit this all out later.
Oh no, we don't edit.
Curses.
It
Um,
all goes out.
Damn. Well, okay, I'll say this. A racing pigeon is basically a homing pigeon.
Okay.
And everybody that has one gathers at a certain point, And these pigeons have a little chip on their leg. And the goal is everybody releases their pigeons, and then the pigeons are supposed to fly to their home roost. And you don't know who the winner is until later. The pigeons they're trained to pass in front of a sensor when they get to their home roost. And you can calculate later, okay, this pigeon covered this distance in this time. So you know who the fastest pigeon was. You don't know who the winner is until probably the next day. And racing pigeon races are anywhere from 10 to 600 miles. 10 miles is a short race. 600 miles is the distance that this pigeon can travel in a day. And we're talking about the pigeons they used in the Civil War and World War I to handle messages, to get
Mm-hmm.
messages back from the front.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's what they are, is just homing pigeons that are timed. And I know there's more to it than that. I think I mentioned before that Des Moines used to have four
Yeah.
different racing pigeon clubs in as recently as the 1980s. But it's definitely just something
Who
I
knew?
stumbled upon, and once every 3 years I raise this corn and store it in a bin and deliver it as they need supplies to be refilled.
Can I just tell you that before we do this conversation every week, I always have a cheat sheet by me, right? And I put all these notes on here of things that I want to cover with the guest. And with you, we've got some deep stuff to talk about the future of corn and the industry and ag and all kinds of stuff, these changes. The best part of this gig is to find out these unexpected organic sidebars that my kids never care about what I do at work all day, but I can now at dinner tonight talk about that I met a guy who knows about racing pigeons and they may actually care about what I'm talking about.
My daughter worked in wildlife rehabilitation down in Florida, in the Sanibel Island. And racing pigeon races in Florida are shorter because really, unless you go to the south end of Florida, there's only one direction they can go, and that's to the coast. Anyway, one day somebody brought in a pigeon with a one of these little chips on its leg, and my daughter contacted the owner of the pigeon. You're able to track that down, and the guy said, "Now, it didn't come back to the roost, so it really is of no good to me. So give it away to somebody as a pet if you want."
Hmm.
So racing pigeons, first off, have to be able to find their way home to have a successful race, and then they got to be the fastest. So that probably narrows the field down quite a bit.
It probably does, some high demands. All right, let's talk about some deep stuff here. And you alluded to a few of the things. I'm curious, how are you viewing the national conversation when it comes to E15? There has been, I feel like I have heard politicians numerous times now where it feels like there's momentum, 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 and essentially promises that there will be this year-round announcement, boom, it's going to finally happen. And then it doesn't. And now we've seen the administration has done what the previous one did. So they're going to do the exemptions and we're going to have summertime sales of E15. First of all, what is that like for you? And how crucial is it for the industry to get this permanently established year round?
I was in at the White House South Lawn last Friday. I flew out there because Trump was having a big announcement, and he
Hmm.
invited I don't know, 700 or 800 farmers from across the country
Yeah.
to talk to us. And a big announcement was promised. I thought, well, what could that big announcement be? It could be, for example, a trade deal with details to it with
Hmm.
India or some other major country.
Yeah.
Or I was hoping in my heart of hearts that it would be an announcement for year-round E15. It was something less exciting. It was, hey, I've gotten you $12 billion dollars, and there might be more on the way. No, the taxpayer got us $12 billion dollars, and the taxpayer may be on the way for more. Um,
Which is not what you want. There's
uh,
not a,
I'd
nobody
rather
wants
not.
that.
I'd rather make my money the honest way, which is, having fair and transparent markets. and trade deals. That's the biggest thing agriculture needs. But E15, year-round E15 would have been nice. And I was hoping that maybe we'll get that announcement. We did not. Had already announced extending another E15 summer waiver, which is what's been done for years now. We pretty much expect it. Biden did it, and I think Trump did it in his first term. But that's not a permanent fix. Why we would like E15, why it's important to the industry is oh God, this is one of those things that's got so many benefits you want to slap your head. It would not cost the government anything. It would save the consumer billions of dollars. It would help clean up the air. And it would, ethanol, E15 is made in America. If anything is made in America, it's crops that are grown in this country and then turned to fuel in this country. And that's exactly what Trump brags about. Let's get it made in America. Let's bring factories back here. Here's one that's already in place. And then it would be a desperately needed win for the farming community. And E15 year-round wouldn't be a permanent fix because the thing is that we keep growing more and more corn all the time.
Mm-hmm.
E15, corn has a demand gap. We keep growing more and more, but we can't eat anymore here. We can't drive anymore. I'm an American. I'm eating and driving all that I can to do my share. But frankly, we need to find more uses for it. E15 would be a good temporary solution. It might buy us 3 or 4 or 5 more years before we once again get back to building up that
Surplus
carryout at the end of the year. I mean, we have roughly a 2 billion bushel carryout. What are we going to do when there's a 3 billion bushel carryout or a 4 billion bushel carryout? Prices will be below $2 at that point. And year-round E15 would buy us a few years of extra usage, and for all the other benefits I mentioned, made in America, help clean up the air, save the consumer money at the gas pump. Honestly, 90% of all fuel buying decisions are based on price, and this would bring the price down. One more thing, it'd help fight fuel price inflation, which is what, over $4 now nationwide.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it would not cost the government anything. It'd just be basically a sign of a pen. Our president has said, "Get me E15 legislation on my desk, and I'll sign it."
And he came to Iowa and said that.
Great, but he needs to make a few more phone calls. He didn't say anything about, "I'll work overtime to get E15 to my desk." All you got to do is make a couple of phone calls, and it would happen. We've seen how our Republican congressional people, our senators and our representatives will do whatever he asks of them. So all he's got to do is call and say, "Hey, listen, I want E15, vote for it." And I'm guessing that congressmen will be falling all over themselves to do his bidding. They've done it for so many other things before. So, yeah, President Trump said he'd sign something, but we now are saying, why don't you get something going in Congress, because we know you can.
Okay, so because of the role you have, you are talking to members of Congress, right? Like what are they telling you about why this has not happened yet?
Part of it is the petroleum industry. They don't want to give up another 5% of the gas tank. That's the basics of it. And so then there's a kind of a little civil war within the petroleum industry, small refiners versus big refiners. And as it's been explained to me, the big refineries would like to just, let's agree to E15 and make this issue go away. The small refineries are at least claiming that they'll have financial hardship if year-round E15 goes into play. My response to them is this. You've had E15 exemptions for summers now, several summers through the last couple terms. It's pretty much been renewed every summer. How many of you have gone bankrupt in all that time? Not a one. They're playing political games, and ethanol, E15 is the is the hockey puck that keeps getting knocked around. I spoke with Randy Feenstra a couple of times last week. The last
And
time
for
was
those, excuse me, one sec. For those who are not from Iowa, he is a congressman from Northwest Iowa.
yes, yes, and he is leading the charge on year-round E15. There is a coalition of roughly 40 Corn Belt representatives, and he's leading the charge amongst all of them, as well as taking on he's one of the two leaders of the committee that was formed
That
to,
biofuels caucus.
yes, that's it. Yes, thank you. And I talked to him last week on the White House lawn, and he said, we're dealing with uh, a president who can be he can change his mind in an instant. So we have to be very careful how we go. And he's, it's like walking on, almost like walking on eggshells. So he's got to get everything exactly lined up. And there's been a few times when all of us thought that E15 was dead, and he and his congressional allies have kept it going. I wish I could thank all of them by name. I can't. I'm just going to go to Randy Feenstra in particular. When we go to DC, when I go to DC, all of the Iowa congressional delegation, our two senators and our four representatives are all on the same page. So I don't need to convince them. What we need to do and what they are working on tirelessly is to convince those others that don't really know anything about agriculture. They don't know how dire things are out here in the countryside. 90% of the representatives in Congress aren't from a district that has any agriculture of any significance. So we're in a minority to start with. We're working against an adversary that has very deep pockets, the petroleum industry. And we have to, like I said, we have to exercise extreme patience, extreme caution. And I will tell you that just looking at Randy Feenstra, I think he's aged over the last 6 months on this particular issue. I know our delegation is working overtime on this, and I'm cautiously optimistic. But I got to tell you, farmers need a win, and this would be one of those no-brainer wins. So why can't we get it done? Not everybody considers it in their best financial interests, and first among them would be the petroleum industry.
If you if since you got since they gave this summer waiver here, does that at least give that portion of certainty and maybe buy a little time for a permanent year-round agreement to come later? Does that take a little bit of the pressure off that? I understand. I totally get the idea if you want certainty for the future. I totally get that. But at least so that you know this summer is taken care of, does that then maybe give them more time to strike a deal?
Well, yeah, it does. But we pretty much get the summer waivers granted every summer anyway. Like I
Yeah,
said,
yeah.
Biden was doing it, and I think Trump was doing it before then. So the markets have already built that into their pricing, and the folks that do blending of ethanol and gas, some of them still aren't going to do it because it's like, well, we'd have to change our mixing formulas and all that stuff for 3 months or 5 months, whatever, and then we got to go right back
And
again. So
sure,
it's not like there's many people jumping on that it's moving the markets. It's a band-aid. That's what it is. It's a band-aid on a much bigger problem. And the problem is that we grow too much corn and we end up we have more competition in corn and beans than we ever used to. I mean, look at Brazil.
for sure.
Every time we take an acre of corn out of, every time we take an acre of farmland in this country, we basically created an acre and a half of farmland in Brazil. And that's a policy thing. That's not necessarily E15. It's just that the market wants more corn, and if we don't provide it, somebody else will. And in this case, it's Brazil. Look what they've done with soybeans and what they're gradually getting to in corn. Now, they can't grow corn easily in Brazil. It takes a whole lot of a lot more fertilizer to do it down there than it does
Sure.
here because Brazil is basically a tropical sterile soil. If they went 4 days without rain, it'd be like me going 4 weeks without rain.
Yeah.
Um, it's that sterile a soil,
Yeah.
but at the same time, they're importing a ton of fertilizer, uh, and that's another one of our input costs that's going up through the roof. Iowa Corn has been involved in. Uh, we've worked with Senator Grassley on creating the Fertilizer Research Act, and that was just introduced last week in the House of Representatives as well. That's something that we hope will get moved through Congress fairly quickly or attached to the next farm bill whenever we get one of those,
Yeah.
because fertilizer prices aren't following the markets. Um,
Well, I saw they're up, depending on what you're using, 20 to 40% since the war broke out with Iran.
yes, but the thing is that they were going up even before then.
For
You could
sure.
say that they have defied the markets since COVID came along. In was it 2019? Corn prices and fertilizer prices were here.
Hmm.
And then corn prices went up with COVID, and fertilizer prices went up with COVID. Then we got through COVID after a couple of years, and corn prices came back down,
Yeah.
and fertilizer prices stayed up here.
Did
And in
not.
fact, they've been creeping gradually upwards. And then we had the war in Russia's invasion of
Ukraine.
Ukraine, and fertilizer was up here. Corn popped back up, and then after a while, the world saw that we can still get corn, so it came down. Fertilizer stayed up there, and now we have the war in Iran, and corn hasn't even gone up a little bit, but not much, and fertilizer prices have continued to go up. It's basically that those three events right there have provided certain industries with a perfect excuse to say, "Well, sorry, we got a war going on somewhere." Now, Ukraine, that was what, 4 years ago, more than 4 years ago.
Yeah.
Our market system, our free market system, does a very good job of getting inputs to where they're needed when the price is high, and then that brings prices back down. I will use this example. Every time there's a hurricane down in Florida, look at all the generators that get bought up in Minnesota and loaded onto pickups and headed down to Florida so that people can get their power back on. We do a very good job of our economic system does a very good job of taking care of shortages. Here's a shortage that's defying all market logistics and sense. It's basically consolidation of our fertilizer supply industry down to four companies. Let's see, we have Mosaic, which has the bulk of the phosphorus industry, like 70 to 90%. Let's see, we've got CF Industries, we've got Nutrien, we've got Koch brothers. Those four companies control up to 90% of the inputs I need to raise a crop of corn. We have had consolidation for decades. When I started farming 30 years ago, there were 20 different sources for those three
Mm.
fertilizer inputs. Now we have four. Now the consolidations always have been promoted as, well, we'll pass the savings on to the consumer. No, I'm afraid not. The profits have been passed on to the shareholder. Um, and what I would like is for our antitrust laws and market manipulation laws to be enforced. This is not a new thing. I've looked at my fertilizer prices. Let's go back to 2022. I was getting, I'm trying to remember the numbers, like almost $6 for my corn, 30 or 40 cents less in 2023, 30 or 40 cents less in 2024. My 2025 crop is going to drop by almost $1. But my input prices have been going up, particularly fertilizer and seed. I don't have to buy a new tractor every year. I can give up a piece of land I might be renting that's overly overpriced, and I can probably search around for a generic chemical, a generic version of something I'm already using, like Roundup or whatever. But I gotta have fertilizer, especially nitrogen. I gotta have seed every year to plant a corn crop. Excuse me. So consolidation in the fertilizer industry is something else that Iowa Corn has been tackling. We've been working with Senator Grassley's office to form this legislation, and then uh, it's been picked up in the House side as well and introduced. That's one of our, it doesn't get as much publicity as E15, but that could be a longer term fix. I've been going on for a while here, but I'll say this: the farmers are on the ropes. Economic times are tough. We're not quite to where we were in the 1980s with the farm crisis,
Hmm.
but I think that's right on our doorstep. So, input high prices and low prices for the grain I sell, I can't control either.
Let me ask you this, with all the frustrations you've dealt with the conversations and failure to pass year-round E15, you did get the announcement about RFS, the Renewable Fuel Standard, and upping the volume on that. So and that's the highest in the 20-year history of this. So what will the outcome of that be? How big a deal is that?
It helps. I mean, but just about every member of Iowa Corn Growers Association also raises soybeans, including
Hmm.
myself. So it will help. I think we have 3 closed plants in Iowa, and that might bring some of them back online.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, we grow soybeans and we do that very well. So that announcement helps. But we need more than that. So I'll take it.
Sure.
I'll take it just like I take all the checks the government keeps sending me. I haven't sent one back yet, but I'd rather not rely on emergency bailout payments.
Okay, I got a hard one to close with for you, and the the producers each generation are significantly better than the generation before, right? We can go back to 2000, and I think we're cranking out about 50% more than we did back in 2000, if I remember the figure correctly. Is this sustainable going forward? And is there room, like you already mentioned, the carryover that we're dealing with now? It's two now. What if it goes to three? Are we going to have to see some people just exit? Like, are we growing too much of this and there's just truly no way, especially in light of our trade challenges where, you can't ever count on China for anything. And now with what Brazil and Argentina are doing, is it just not a viable path for some people anymore? Which sucks. And I know that's a hard question, especially for a guy who's grown this for generations. But like, what's going to make it sustainable, and is it sustainable for all these families to stay in the business?
Uh, Not all these families will stay in the business. There will be, I'm afraid, a consolidation, and you've heard of the disappearing American middle class,
Yeah, for sure.
which is basically the bedrock of this country. I think you're going to have a disappearing of the middle or a reduction of the middle class of American farmers. The mid-sized farmers, uh, you're going to have you're going to have more bigger farmers
Hmm.
and more smaller farmers that have a job in town. Um, it's the middle class of farmers that you're going to see fewer of, and we're the ones that keep small town America alive. We're the ones that deal with a local implement dealership and we shop in town for our groceries and things like that. Um, I will say that the smaller operators, the ones that rely on a job on the farm and they farm on weekends, they probably can't buy inputs as frequently. They can't buy a tractor that often, not that I do. And then you might have the big boys who just bypass the local dealer or the local seed dealer and go right to the factory or the company. So you're going to see any hollowing out of the middle class of American farmers is going to result in a further hollowing out of small town America. Now, is this inevitable? Market forces push us to grow the things that we are very good at.
Hmm.
100 years ago, around my farm, uh, I'm looking out the window now, and the fields 100 years ago had sugar beets in
Hmm.
my land. I'm in Northeast Iowa. All we do is grow corn and soybeans and the animals that eat those things. But 100 years ago, we had a sugar beet factory in my town. And I could still grow sugar beets, but the nearest sugar beet factory is now 250 miles away up in Minnesota,
Mm.
closer to the Red River Valley where they raise those things. We can grow just about anything in Iowa, but we need to have the local market for it. I can't afford to transport sugar beets or whatever that far.
Sure.
Economic forces have pushed us to grow the things that we do best. And in Iowa, the best thing we do, and Illinois and the Corn Belt, the best things we do are to grow corn and soybeans and the animals that eat those. We're going to grow more corn. We're doing it more efficiently all the time. We're going to make more ethanol. You know, when ethanol got started, you could get 2.4 gallons of ethanol out of a bushel of corn. And now, thanks to technology, we get 3 gallons out of a bushel of corn. When my father farmed 40 or 50 years ago, he would have been very happy with 120 bushel per acre yield.
Hmm.
Now I call my crop insurance agent if I have a yield that low.
Yeah.
We're raising more with less inputs. We're getting by with less fertilizer. We have biotechnology that helps us get more water use efficiency out of our crops. Here's one of the potentials that I don't think people realize. We can make so much more stuff out of corn than just livestock feed or ethanol. Uh, and here's something Iowa Corn has been leading the charge on. There's something we started a couple of years ago called the Radical Challenge, and we worked with a firm to put forth $1 million first prize for a innovative new technology that would use up more corn. It was held in San Francisco, and there was $1 million first prize and a $500,000 second prize. And we had several other states join in with us, although Iowa Corn led this whole event. We got 142 companies from around the world enter this contest, and we got it narrowed down to the final four. And we had a Shark Tank like event. We brought in experts, economists, scientists. The company that we worked with had brought in specialists to analyze the specific areas that these companies were focused on. The final four, if all four of these companies had started their technology maybe 10 years ago, would have been able to use up over 1 billion bushels of corn just in their technologies if they'd come to fruition. That's more than half of our 2 billion bushel carryout right now. The winner was a company called Lacryl, and they make acrylic acid out of ethanol. They use ethanol as a feedstock for acrylic acid. Why is that important? Because acrylic acid is a feedstock for so many more chemistries. And the chemical industry can make all this stuff out of oil, but they're crying out for the ability to say, give us something that's biorenewable that we can pitch to our customers and do it for no more than the price of oil.
Hmm.
Lacryl has gotten that. They've achieved the technological breakthroughs, and the company is being scaled up right now. They were the winners of that $1 million prize. And if their technology were to come to, if their technology was in place today, fully implemented, I mean, it's still in the scaling up process, and it takes years. I think their estimate was that they could have used well over 500 million bushels of corn just by themselves.
Hmm.
Acrylic acid is, the chemical industry is probably the biggest potential future use. It might be the next ethanol for corn, because there's more than acrylic acid. There's lactic acid, there's acetic acid. All these things can be made out of ethanol, which is made out of corn. You just have to be able to do it cheaper than you can make it out of oil.
Hmm.
And there are companies out there that are willing to even pay a little bit more just to be able to say, this is from a biorenewable source. Now, the ethanol industry hit its stride 20 plus years ago, but it got started 20 years before that. So we're talking about investments in industries that will pay off eventually. But do I have an overnight solution for that? No, that's kind of where year-round E15 will buy us a few more years. Trade deals would buy us a lot. I mean, why are we picking fights with our closest neighbors and our biggest customers? I'm talking about Canada for ethanol and Mexico for grain and meat, the things that go into that, DDGs, byproduct of ethanol. That was a very long answer to your short question.
But it needed to be told. Mark, we appreciate it. I did not think we'd talk about racing pigeons, but I appreciate that you gave us a deep dive on some of these other longer term challenges as well.
All right, I'll tell you right now, you've learned everything I know about racing pigeons, so that's pretty much it.
That is going to be the benefit of my week. Thank you, Mark. Really appreciate it. Thanks for the conversation.
My pleasure. Please call again.
Will do. He is Mark Mueller, and thanks to him, I now know a lot more about racing pigeons. If you want to learn more about Mark and the Iowa Corn Growers Association, you can check out our profile piece about him. You can find that in the weekly American Farmland Owner newsletter. Comes out every Friday. It's full of information and interviews with thought leaders from all over the world about the latest trends and challenges relating to agriculture. Check it out right now. It's the place where landowners get their news, AmericanFarmlandOwner.com. Thanks for joining us here on the podcast, and thanks for caring about the future of our farmland.